Good morning, everybody. It is 8:30. Let us call the meeting to order. And we are generally exceptionally well served with Councillor Philo, who leads us in the karakia. But as you will see, she's online today. So I think with the delay there might be on the line, let's all do it together. Without necessary lead. So we've got it in our papers, so if we can all say the karakia together. So, waka taki te hui ki tuere, tonga, ata, Kia ora and thank you. I think we missed the lead, Councillor Philu. Thank you all for that. Welcome to everyone, but a very special welcome to a person. Now, every birthday is special, but some of them are more special because they end in a zero. And we have Councillor Turilin, who's with us today, who has a special birthday. Josh, welcome. This is above and beyond being here on a special birthday, so congratulations to you. And I hope you have a wonderful day, including the Audit Risk Committee. Yes, I wasn't going to disclose what the number was in front of the zero, so... we have a leave of absence for Councillor Tracy Johnson. We don't need to move or second that. And I just want to note that the Mayor needs to depart at 9:30. So thank you, Mayor, for letting us know on that. And you slip out when you have to during the meeting. As you'll see, we've got Felicity and Councillor Philu on the video. And Felicity, we're all very envious. Felicity is on a boat heading for Istanbul, and she was telling me earlier she's just gone past the Gallipoli Peninsula. So again, Felicity, I think this is above and beyond the call of duty to be zooming into us whilst on holiday, and we really appreciate your effort in making those arrangements and being with us today. So
happy to.
So that's the beginning part, the welcomes and the apologies. Are there any other apologies? I think other than that we have a full house. So welcome to the staff also. I know there's some new staff members here at the Audit and Risk Committee, so very, very warm welcome to you all. Agenda item 3, public participation. We have not received any requests for public participation at this meeting. Conflicts of interest. You'll all be very disappointed if I don't pause here and raise it, because I always do, as the importance of making sure that we have the interest registers up to date and we declare any conflicts of interest that may be arising in relation to our business today. So I'll just pause and make sure there are no conflicts of interest and ask everyone to ensure their registers are up to date. All right, so thank you for your forbearance and toleration of me raising this, but it's within local government, it's a really, really important point. There are no items of extraordinary business, so no need to deal with agenda item 5. Agenda item 6, confirmation of the minutes of our meeting on the 13th of June. So it does seem a while since we've had a meeting, and the reason we've delayed the September meeting is so that we fit into the annual report and financial statements timetable. So I'll move that the minutes that are in our agenda papers of the 13th of June be taken as a correct record of that meeting. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Leggett. Moved and second. Any amendments, changes, adjustments to the minutes? Silence is assent. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, carried. Right. Agenda item 7.1, Health and Safety Quarterly Report. Always a very important and always a very interesting agenda item on the Audit and Risk Committee. We've been asked to note this report, so to get it on the table, I will move that we note the Health and Safety Quarterly Report for the end of June, I think this is. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Mayor. Moved and seconded. Sam, thank you very much, you and your team, for the work that you do in this regard, the report that you present to us, and take it as read, but highlight the points in it that you want us to be aware of.
Morena koutou, and thank you, Chair. So to be quite brief, I'll provide a couple of points. So this reporting period, Q2, March to June, we saw an increased number of reporting by a number of groups who we haven't seen in the past, and this can be tied to a lot of safety initiatives being driven across the business, specifically a big safety initiative by our Parks and City Services team, who are looking to refresh their safety culture, and part of that is obviously we're seeing much more reporting coming through from them, but we're also seeing much more reporting coming through from our smaller contractors through the team, which has been really great to identify some challenges for them and part of our duty as a PCBU and the overlapping duties component of the Health and Safety at Work Act. The second point, and obviously noting in the paper, since Q2 we've been undertaking with WorkSafe a workplace site assessment. So this is in relation to the breathing challenges that have been ongoing at Te Rauparaha Arena. So we've been back and forth with WorkSafe for the better part of 4 months about our process. Work site assessments are really a task for WorkSafe to ensure that PCBUs are undertaking appropriate processes, ensuring the systems in place are fit for purpose, but also as part of an educational campaign for them about nuanced risks that they might not be exposed to. So to date, we haven't had anything significant from WorkSafe in relation to the breathing challenges over there, beyond some questions around experts to bring in. And really, we're kind of at the end of the tether about what we can actually do and look at that space over there. One of the things that we could look at that's on the cards is whether we can adjust the chemistry of the pool environment, which is quite an extreme thing to do given they're designed for specific purposes. And then the last thing I'd like to raise was just the threats remain at a constant level towards staff and contractors. So this is going to be probably an ongoing thing as the cost of living and recent bills that have gone out come to the fore. So we're keeping a close eye on that, and we're starting to see a few more threats coming through for our contractors as well. So it's been really great with increasing the reporting from our teams, especially with those contractors who may be subjected to some threats or aggressive behaviour while they're conducting work on our behalf. But I think those are all the key points that I'll share. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Sam. Open for discussion. Councillor Turalin.
Thanks very much. So I wanted to clarify on that. So are you fairly confident that the big increase we've seen in reporting can be entirely explained by basically improved reporting by our staff as opposed to any other increases in actual incidents?
A big part of it is increased reporting of our staff across the board. We have much more incidents of near misses, much more reporting of injury-related incidents. So staff who would previously get a cut and brush it off as just something that's part of the job are now reporting those sorts of things. So we are seeing quite an increase in those areas. Better education and awareness of what to report, but also the value of reporting and what our end does to try and rectify the situation. So it's all part of the equation.
Councillor Leggett.
Just following on from that, does that include the smaller contractors as well? The fact that, I mean, have you gone to the smaller contractors and had a push on reporting, or do they just happens to have come through?
A big part is that education with some of our teams. So Parks and City Services obviously deal with a lot of contractors, smaller contractors, and so they've had a big push as part of their safety culture adjustment to look at contracting and how they engage with contractors, how involved our staff need to be in the works. Of course, the risk is still there when contractors conduct work on our behalf, and so having that awareness of those sorts of risks, but also the reporting back from our contractors to advise us of risks that they're exposed to while they're conducting work has been quite key. So it's we haven't so much gone to our contractors rather than our staff have been better engaged with their contractors as part of those duties.
Councillor Trelin.
Just on the notifiable events in relation to the ozone and the breathing issues at Te Rauparaha Arena. So you mentioned that really the only other thing we could potentially look at doing was an adjustment of the chemistry itself. Just on that, is that something that we're currently actively looking at doing? And if we are, A, is there any significant costs attached to that? And B, are there any other risks that we would need to be aware of from adjusting that chemistry?
Through the Chair, great question. There's always flow-on consequences of some of these things. Yes, there is likely to be a cost associated with this. Yes, we are engaging with a national expert on what that looks like. She advises many other pools on the use of chlorine-type systems, so obviously ozone is one of them. And yes, there are likely to be flow-on consequences. We haven't explored yet, but as part of doing our due diligence to flip over all of the rocks available to us to see what the causes are to this, it's unfortunately going to be one of them, which we will take through the executive as well.
Do you have a rough idea of what sort of time frame we're looking at in terms of getting the advice on that and trying something different?
Through the Chair, we're hoping over the next couple of weeks she gets back to us with a bit of advice. She had a site visit about last month at Te Rauparaha Arena just to have a physical look at the entire equipment and the how the team works over there. So she has a good grasp, and she's also received all of our reporting over the last 14 months on this particular issue, including all of the remedies that the team have put in place at the arena to help try and mitigate the issues over there. So she's well informed, but hopefully over the next couple of weeks she gives us a steer as to whether there is anything we can do or if we've reached the end of what that could look like.
Mayor, and then Councillor Leggett.
Thank you. It's never good to see the rise of abuse on our staff. At the arena, are we going to be putting any more signs up to advise people to talk to the staff before they ring 111 or things like that after that big event 2 weeks ago where we had every doctor and fire service and everything in town for nothing? Because the people that are using these facilities should know to talk to our staff first. So that thing just put us into the media.
Through the Chair, we did discuss a few weeks ago about a customer code of conduct, and as part of that, what information we have at all of our sites to ensure proper guidance is shared, and that has been one of the suggestions, is about how that occurs. They did engage with our staff on the day, but obviously whether they didn't trust the advice or just felt quite incensed to follow that course of action.
Councillor Leggett.
Just one comment and a question. So the comment is that with the smaller contractors, again, it did raise my eyebrows that it took this long to get that information from small contractors, and that's just a little bit of a worry. So I hope that continues going forward, and that because it upsets the data, doesn't it, when you look back? So that's the first one. And the second question, the question is, page 18 under staff-related incidents, what's a small electric shock?
I believe that particular incident involved a water blaster and a plug exposed to a bit of water, and our staff received one of those slight shocks that you might get, say, not quite static, but a little bit more than that.
I just note that the potential there from an electric plug is a death. So I hope that something has happened to prevent that occurring in the future. Otherwise, it could be a heck of a lot worse.
I can answer that through the chair. We did conduct a quick investigation following that incident and found staff just didn't follow the right process in terms of using equipment, but also checking equipment is still fit for purpose. So we've now changed that, ensured that staff are aware of that process. It's one of the challenges when we bring new staff in to understand what the processes are, and this was one of those things that happened and caught us off guard by chance.
Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thanks for the report there. It's great. The one from EnviroWaste worried me a bit there. There was one particular report in it on page 19, completed VCR on sprayer Maruka, and it had safety issues, 300mm drop-off to get onto the step to load the hopper, no reverse camera, no safety rails, no design. There's a hell of a litany of stuff there. Do we follow up to see that they're actually doing something about that? Because this person is saying that they've been telling them for weeks that had these problems.
Through the chair, yes, I believe there is follow-up. There is a monthly meeting between the main contractor and our staff, but I can follow up with our council representative on that one.
Get to the near misses for Downer and the wastewater treatment plant. There's no commentary on those. Can they just choose not to give us commentary on that to let us know what's happening there?
Through the chair, this is another one we're following up with. I believe there's a meeting between ourselves and Downer, and one of the talking points is their health and safety reporting. It is a bit of an open option for them. We have asked them for their data, their details that they have available, and they are very different. But I'll take that comment and pass that on to them, that this committee would like more data.
That's great. And one last one was the near-miss reporting on page 15 there. The key highlight says 72 near-miss reports, but the bar graph just shows 70. What were the other two there?
Through the chair, it's either a typo or a mistake on my end, but I'll follow up on that one as always, Councillor.
Thanks, Councillor Duncan. We rely on you to pick up those points. Two comments or points from me, Sam. In relation to the pool, it may be helpful for the committee for you to indicate, because I understand when I asked you a question last week that you have benchmarked with other pools around various settings, and so it could be helpful to just indicate briefly what you've done in that work.
Through the chair, so part of our investigation into this whole space is to obviously inquire with other pool-like facilities whether they also experience similar types of incidents. And I believe, Glenn, when you all attended the health and safety site visit to Te Rauparaha Arena some months ago, gave a quick presentation on what that looked like. To date, very few facilities have gone through a similar type situation. There have been situations in the past where chloramine type effects have occurred. I think the National Swimming Championships earlier this year, where 70 kids were evacuated from the facility as soon as they jumped into the pool because of chloramine exposure. Very different to what we get exposed to. Our breathing challenges occur at the very end of their 2-hour swimming session as opposed to the very start. So it's a very different challenges there. But there's very few who have experienced this sort of thing. And those who have, we've followed pretty much every single thing that they undertook to rectify the situation in the same vein. So it's one of those challenges that's ongoing.
Thank you, Sam. That's really helpful. My second comment was the reporting from the contractors, and interesting to know that you've, in this quarter, been able to get reporting from smaller contractors. And I was interested in your comment that you're saying, they are starting to see some sort of antisocial behaviour and abuse towards them. So they're very clear that we as a group are sensitive to that and want to know from them any instances that they have in that regard. Are they clear on that?
Through the chair, not so much specifically for threatening behaviour, but it's certainly a risk to facilities and pending question of what current risks we have. Threats in the public, and specifically to our staff and contractors, where there's very little ability for us to put controls in place to minimise that. So that's going to be a constant challenge for us, which we'll make quite clear. They'll be very keen to ensure that those sorts of incidents are reported through to us quite quickly.
All right, just before I close it off, can I just check with Councillor Philo or Felicity online? Do you have any questions? Felicity, you look like you do.
Well, you won't be surprised that I've got my usual question, which is just to check, Sam, that, great report. Was really good to see the contractor information in there. But just given that the report's up to the end of June, just wanting to check if there's anything in the last 3.5 months that has happened that you've noticed that you should bring to the attention of the committee.
Through the chair, beyond the threats in the public places that I've raised, the other challenge that we have been navigating already is the national dynamic. Of course, with national guidelines being set in place, we are seeing some situations where some of our larger contractors are not so much deviating from the national guidelines, but putting in place more risk-based approaches towards how they set things up. Example being traffic management planning, which to our contractor is allowing them to do it in a safe manner, but from a guideline point of view is conflicting with it. So there's something there that we have to navigate through as overlapping duties, and it's going to be a constant thing, especially with new guidelines coming through from WorkSafe about having a more risk-based approach towards how we tackle some of the works, which will deviate quite a bit from how we have done it for either many decades or many years. So that's going to be a challenge for us to navigate through. But as long as we and the contractors are open to talk to one another about how we manage risk, we should be able to cope quite well through that journey.
And you'll keep us up to date on how that progresses?
Through the chair, yes, I will.
Yeah. Thanks, Sam. That's all from me.
Thank you, Felicity. Councillor Philo.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Chair. No, I feel like a lot of my questions were answered by asked by my colleagues. So I don't have any questions.
Thank you. Sam, just one observation from another experience that I've had recently in a council-owned pool. They've had a huge problem over the school holidays with unaccompanied children being dropped off and sort of left there most of the day. And I'm not sure whether it's a health and safety, but there are requirements under the Child Protection Act, I think. And to a lesser extent, they're seeing it in libraries as well. Has that been an issue here in this school holidays?
Through the chair, I can't speak to the specifics. I'm seeing a no from our library manager. We have had the odd incident come through of the odd child being left for a little bit at our pool, but not a great deal. But I can follow up with our recreation team whether that is the case.
Certainly, the other incident that I came across, there was a big uptick in that in this year in these school holidays. So. All right. If there's no further questions or discussions on health and safety, thanks once again, Sam, for a comprehensive report and discussion. It's been moved and seconded that we receive this health and safety report for the quarter ending 30th of June. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. All right, agenda item 7.2, risk and assurance update. We've been asked to receive this report and to get the report on the table for discussion. I'm happy to move that we receive this report. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Moved and seconded. So, Phyllis, thank you very much again for your work and your report. And again, we look forward to you introducing it to us.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Morena koutou, committee. So this is just really in brief, the first quarter update on the 24-25 audit plan. So at this early stage of the program, a lot of items are still in progress, and the results will be presented to this committee in due course. But suffice to say that there is no matters of concern to raise at this stage in terms of the progress of the work program. And through the Chair, if I may just highlight a few items within this report itself. You will note that we've been working on updating our internal policies, and we are making good progress. This, the numbers doesn't look as perhaps like there is, but in terms of in the background, I'm confident that you would see quite a big improvement in that space pretty soon. And in terms of the status of open findings, apologies first of all, there's a bit of formatting errors in the table. I'm sure you would have noticed it. But again, there's actually good progress in this space, and there is one item that is, in terms of sensitive expenditure, that is kept open. The actions in that space have been completed, but I've chose to keep it open in terms of to allow myself to do some additional monitoring to see if that action has been effective. And this action is around just making a lot more. We've updated our policy, and we've improve our guidance and put some messaging out around sensitive expenditure. But this is always an area that I prefer to perhaps do more work and monitoring just to ensure that we keep ourselves and the council safe. In terms of the insurance work program, a fuller report will be provided in December. But we have been looking at optimizing our program, and we have also obtained legal advice in terms of the adequacy of some of our coverage. And without waiving any legal liability, suffice to say that at this stage, we have sufficient cover in terms of the specific areas that we were asking about, which is in terms of liability. So happy to take any questions through the Chair.
Thank you, Phyllis. Questions, discussions? Looks like you've dealt with them all. Just on those outstanding items, Phyllis, and there's not many of them, but they're not old ones, are they? They're sort of relatively recently raised points.
Yes, the oldest, as I mentioned, was back up to September 2023, so a year old, and that's relating to sensitive expenditure. And as mentioned, this is something I just prefer to keep open at this stage.
So that's the oldest one of the three outstanding. So okay, that's good. Because many times you see that there's some really old ones in there, and you wonder whether they're ever going to get dealt with. So. Yep. All right, so we have the motion that we receive this internal risk and assurance update. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Thank you, Phyllis, for your work. All right, agenda item 7.3, again, another standing item. The Treasury Investment and Liability Management Quarterly Report. So we've been asked to receive this report, so I'll move in that regard. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Waddle. Thank you for that. So who's going to speak on this? You're going to start, Jim. We understand that Graham, who normally speaks on it, is on leave. So.
Yes, he is.
I saw him in the street.
Much needed leave.
Yeah.
And the amount that he's banked lately.
I can tell. I saw him in the street yesterday, and he looked very relaxed. So.
Good to know. Look, between Ian and I will try and cover this off. So just a few points. All the prudential ratios and requirements are being met as at 30th of June, and they continue to be met today. Just to give you some idea, we've got total debt today, not today, but as at 30th of June of about 267 million. We've raised a further 50 million since then. Our total debt's about 317 million, which is largely in line with the LTP. Obviously, we had a OCR cut yesterday at 50 basis points. That was pretty much expected and banked in, and another 50 basis points is expected, or shall we say, by the markets in November. Everyone's thinking about their mortgages, of course. So the rates that we get today are already reflecting what the market is assuming. And just to give you an idea, I think it was interesting, our average cost of debt at the moment is around 4.3%. So we take floating rate around about 6.2%. And our fixed rate average is around 3%. And it's low because we're fixing in a low interest rate environment previously. So I know Maggie's trying to who works on our Treasury team, is trying to get a fixed rate swap at the moment in 3 years' time for 3 years under 4%. So good luck, Maggie. So the other thing is that we have a policy of keeping our fixed rates to less than 80%. We're running at about 45% at the moment. So we do have some headroom to lift that. That can help us going forward in terms of rates, something that we'll consider. So that gives you largely a summary of where we're at. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jim. Councillor Torelin.
Thank you very much. Just on that assumption around the additional 50 basis points in November, did you say that the market is assuming?
Yeah.
How significant an impact would it be if that doesn't eventuate?
Okay, to give you some idea, that's a good question. You mean in November? Because obviously it's happened yesterday. So 50 basis points is 0.5%, right? So we borrow from the LGFA and we get good rates as a AA- rated entity. The premium that LGA charges somewhere, but depending on your term of loan, so it's anywhere between 50 basis points or 0.5% to 1.3% for the very long rates. If it doesn't eventuate in November, I don't think it's materially going to make much difference because the direction of travel is downwards, and we're tending to take, except for pre-funding, we tend to take longer term debt. So I wouldn't say it was material. And our outlook would be delayed, that's all.
Jim, a couple of points from me. I recall, I think was earlier in the year, that Standard & Poor's had a negative watch on not only Porirua City Council, but many throughout the country. Is that still in place?
So they downrated us from a AA to AA-, so that does slightly affect our borrowing rates, but not substantially. Interesting enough, Standard & Poor's is largely assuming in their analysis that we are borrowing, or our capital expenditure, against which we borrow, is in the order of $100 million a year. So if we start going outside those bounds, they'll have another look at us. Okay.
All right, and the second point was really a comment. I think, I don't think I'm impressed, and council is well served by the Treasury policy when you've got an average cost of funds at or below the OCR. we all know with our sort of personal finances, we always pay a margin over and above the OCR. It was talked yesterday that it was 4.75. Most mortgages are sort of at least 1.5% or 2% higher than that. While the council's cost of funds are sort of at or below that. So, some great decisions made in the past, and a really great result that the council is benefiting from. So.
Thanks, Chair.
Any further comments, questions? Thank you, Jim and Ian. Thank you for being at the table. You can stay there. I think you probably...
He's got more questions
He's coming.
to answer, though.
So, okay, the motion's been moved and seconded. So can I ask for a vote? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary, carried. Thank you, Jim. Okay, agenda item 7.4, and it's the sort of the major agenda item on the October meeting. Is the City Council's annual report and financial statements. And just before we get into this, and I move the motion, quite often it's worthwhile to hear from the auditors before we discuss the annual report. But our agenda says that we discuss the annual report and then we hear from the auditors. So we'll leave it in that order, but if anybody has any questions under this agenda item to the auditors, very happy for that to be sort of raised. And I've spoken to Sam and he's very comfortable to do that. So we've been asked to receive the draft report and also note the comments of the external auditors, agree that the appropriate information and approach has been taken, note the overview of the financial and non-financial results for June 24, and endorse the adoption of the annual report and summary annual report at the 31st of October council meeting. So I'm happy to move in that direction. Councillor Torelin, thank you for seconding that. So open for discussion. Just before I pass to you, Jim first, and then Ian and team, can I say again, council is well served. There's not many councils in New Zealand that will be sitting here on the 10th of October looking at a pretty finalised set of draft annual report, financial statements, and the audit pretty well complete. So, we're in great shape, great effort by the management team to get to this point and to have everything finalised and signed off on the 31st of October. So just a little bit of wind in the sails of the team. So over to you, Jim.
Yeah, look, I think there's a couple of parts to this. There's the financial aspect. Then I think, Mia, you might want to come to the... Oh, sorry, Jack. Jack's going to do it, okay. In regard to the written document. Yes, I'm going to hand this over to Ian in a second. The auditors have been here for what seems to be months and months. Been feeding them chocolate biscuits under the door. Keep them happy, but it's really good that we've got to this place. So I am going to ask Ian to take the lead on this, and I was wondering about the order of events. So Ian, be careful what you say.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Jim. I'd just like to introduce Jack Hamlin. So, as
Welcome, Jack.
As Jim mentioned, the delineation of responsibility or expertise is the numbers and the words. So, I hope that helps in directing your questions. Presenting an annual report is like the pinnacle of an accountant's calendar. So it gives me great pleasure to present this report. It is still draft, but as you mentioned, Chair, it is in a fairly good position. We have had Audit extensively reviewing it. That review still continues, and we do. It is a draft, right, and it's important to stress it is a draft. right through to when it's adopted by council with the audit report signed off. So we are aware that there may be the odd typo, the odd issue that needs to be updated, and if you do spot any, then please do let us know. But we're pretty comfortable that this report is a 99.9% report. So without further ado, if you turn the page on the 7.4 paper to the Statement of Comprehensive Revenue and Expenses, that is essentially a cut and paste from the annual report. So this really does talk through the financial performance of the organisation. If you are immediately drawn, like most financial people, to the bottom line, the very bottom line shows you a comparison between the actual performance, so $58 million surplus, compared to the annual plan number, 55.8. And so those numbers are very close. So, to put that in layman's terms, the accounting profit, if you like, is very much similar to plan. So the bottom line is very similar to plan, but if you actually look at the detail at the rows above the bottom line, you can see some significant changes and movements from the annual plan. Two in particular, the two largest deviations from annual plan, if you like, they're the ones I'd like to just talk through. First, so the first one is just the number immediately above it, which relates to the revaluation of property, plant and equipment. So there's a $20 million positive bump on the annual plan number. And I think that's largely reflective. This year we revalued roading and land under roads and investment properties. And I think that number really shows you, there's actually a bit to that number. I think that shows you what the values of capital items and construction and the unit rates on which the values are calculated. It actually shows you how much movement there has been in the market. And we're seeing that in the amounts that we spend on CapEx. We're seeing that in the way our budgets for CapEx just seems to continually increase. But this is a reflection of a qualified valuer going out to the market and reviewing our asset portfolio. So it really is quite a significant number. 50 million, that's the value increase on those three categories of assets I mentioned. The other really significant number that I'd like to just talk through is the very near the top of the page, so subsidies and grants. So that's down $13.5 million. And that's cash that is not in our bank account that we planned to have in our bank account. So that is a very significant number. If you break that number down and what were the prime drivers behind that, two things. Firstly, we had an assumption in our annual plan around the Kāinga Ora funding arrangements for the work in the eastern suburbs. We had thought that we would be receiving a bulk payment from KO that we would manage to execute the program up there. So that was what the assumption was in the annual plan. Didn't turn out that way. Instead, Kāinga Ora, are delivering the project, and at some point in time they will vest the assets in us to council, and I think that's timed for two years away. So the assumption there changed on us, and that's a big part of that $13.5 million difference.
Can you state something, Ian,
Yes.
through the chair? I think that was subject to a specific negotiation that council did with KO. Is that right, Wendy? So it wasn't by chance. Sort of. Yeah. Yep. So I think it was in the long run a favourable outcome for us.
Yeah. I think it's correct. In the long, it's simply a timing issue. But for this year, when you're looking just with this, this year, it does seem like we received $9 million less than what we had planned. The other component of that grants and subsidies line that was lower than expected was in the NZTA Wakakatahi subsidy area. So we received $4 million less than expected. Again, this is kind of like one of those irritating timing things. We do our planning and complete our planning before Wakakatahi announce their funding. So we do have that tension about timing again. So those two things, I think, are they are the largest contributors to that minus 13 there in the grants and subsidies column. Other than that, there are, of course, some ups and downs that have occurred through the year, but in general, like I say, the accounting profit is around about the same as what annual plan expectation was. Any questions at that stage?
Yes.
Sorry, Councillor Turner.
No worries. Just in relation to the development contributions. So obviously the difference there in dollar figures isn't as significant as some of the others, but percentage-wise, it's probably the most significant difference, being 354 as opposed to 2849. And the explanation says that 2.5 million difference was due to slower completion of property developments. So that my question was, does that relate specifically to some particular developments that we are aware of and we're likely to still see those DCs eventuate in the next financial year? Or, is there a delay in receiving those, or are these disappearing?
Through you, Chair, can I just step back a little and just explain how the treatment of development contributions from an accounting point of view is considered. We may well receive, development funds towards particular development contribution outcomes, but we do not consider them revenue until we deliver the project to which those development outcomes are targeted. So in other words, it may sit in our bank account for some time before the actual delivery of the reservoir or of the park or whatever the particular contribution is. So whilst can't quite remember off the top of my head the amount that we are holding on our balance sheet relating to development contributions, but the amount that we've actually delivered on is the 354. So that's the amount that we can recognise as revenue. Does that make sense? It's a timing issue between when we receive it and when we recognise it as revenue.
Okay, I think that does answer my question. So we can, the amount that we are holding is likely to be higher than that.
Yes,
there
very much
isn't
so.
the same degree of certainty around
Yep.
it at this point, but it very well may eventuate in the
Yes.
next financial year.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
We're actually obligated to refund development contributions if we don't deliver the outcome that those development contributions were collected for. So that's why we really have to be sure that it is revenue before we recognise it as revenue. Otherwise, our auditor friends would be.
Yeah. So in terms of the overall slower completion of property developments, are we able to attribute that basically just to a general slowdown in economic activity, or is there a particular reason that we are aware of that is causing that?
Yeah, look, I think that is one of the major reasons. I mean, for larger developments, we do DC offsets, and so if you look going forward, I mean, some of that, like Plimpton Farm, for example, or any I should be more specific than that actually, commercial developments, we're doing major offsets so that we get the benefit of not having to invest directly our own cash, but it benefits the developer at the same time. So I think this is a signal of the slowdown, even though we might be holding. I can't remember either. I did have that number in my head before. We are holding obviously a reasonable number of DCs on our books at the moment. It's in the millions.
Okay, thank you.
Wendy.
More bluntly, yes, there has been a slowdown. Developers are certainly telling us that they are holding off interest rates. Developers are very good at assessing when to build and when the market's right to sell whatever they're building. So there has been a general slowdown. We've seen it in building consents and resource consents, and it's having an impact on our annual report and our accounts. So, yes, it is to do with the economic situation.
Ian, can I ask a question on the revaluation? As you pointed out, that was 20 million sort of higher than what was in the plan. And because you revalued the land under roads this year, so not all of that will have an impact on depreciation. But
correct.
Yeah,
yes.
one of the big issues when you have a big increase in the valuation like that, it flows through to a higher depreciation charge. So how much of that was sort of land under roads, so that
off the top of my head, I can't answer that. We can do some analysis, but you're absolutely right. The revaluation numbers do flow into the following year's depreciation calculations, and if I think back to the impact that the 23 revaluation had on the 23-24 finances, it was to the tune of an extra $3 million of depreciation that had not been factored into the annual plan. So it gives you some context about how much a revaluation can impact on the following year. We will come to that in the annual plan process, but that's still to be done.
Sam, you're indicating that you might have some information that can help in that regard.
Yeah, sure. So on page 42, there's a table with a yellow header at the bottom. Land under roads is pretty negligible, Warren. Within roading, some components of the roading aren't depreciated, so the subsurface piece, but most of the valuation uplift is the roading driven by cost, and it being 18 months since the last valuation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sam. That's helpful. All right, moving on, Ian. Any further discussion on that first page? Sorry, Councillor Leggett, I did see your hand up.
No, that's fine. Just other expenses, the inflationary pressures, how does that work its way through in terms of roading or three waters? Is this, this is unbudgeted, so we wear the cost of what? How have some of these things, give us an example of how some of these things come through?
Yeah, through you, Chair, it's a really good question. I've done a reasonable amount of analysis on other, because it seems to be a continuous problem that I've been monitoring through the year in monthly finance reports and so on. It's always that thing which is very obvious. It's growing. Why? When you drill down on it, you don't see a singular code. You don't see a singular, it's legal expenses, or it's the roading maintenance contract, or it's all of those things. We actually, we're facing that inflationary pressure across all items in that other category. Some more than others. I mean, the roading contract is the one that comes to mind for the maintenance. I know that's that's just pushing ahead at a higher rate than the rest of the contracts, but they all are. So it's a difficult question to answer.
Right. So these are costs which we're wearing, which are above budget, which were above our original budget cost for, say, roading maintenance. So we go out for potholes or whatever, and it comes back at a higher price in terms of the amount of work that's being done. Is that correct?
Correct.
I want to clarify the roading maintenance one. We've just been out to procurement on that one. So without going into the detail of it, what we're finding is across the board, we have a lot more competitive behaviour. We've got a lot more people turning out to our tenders. Not unusual to get 10 parties tendering. The roading maintenance contract this year was actually highly competitive. I won't say any more than that, but I think we're seeing some downward pressure occurring at the moment, which is encouraging.
So I think picking up on that, the signs may be improved for next year.
Oh, so you're talking about last financial accounts, Ian is correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see that with the CPI, it is coming down, but it has been high. So I think that's a prime driver right across the board.
Conscious of the time and the mayor's about to depart, is there anything that you wish to raise on this agenda item, Mayor, before you sneak out? So, yeah. All right, Ian. You wish to move on, or is that the sort of sum total of your sort of presentation? We can open it up for sort of further discussion in other parts.
Absolutely open to further conversations. If needed.
All right. Thank you for that. So I'm not proposing that we do a page turn. There's over 100 pages, so we'd be here until lunchtime. So you'll be sort of thankful that the chair's made the decision on that. Yes, we can do. Yeah, thank you, Wendy. So, Jack, anything to sort of add on the words on the performance side of the annual report?
Not really. I think the main point to note this year compared to last year is that the performance measures are a lot better on the whole. I think the most notable areas that you'll see are in the water space and in the transport activity area, which, both have significantly improved. I can go into more detail, but I might just open it up to questions rather than take you through each measure and what's improved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you, Wendy, for reminding me on that. So we're open for questions, specific sort of comments on all 100 plus pages of the draft annual report and financial statements. Well, can I start it off? I've just got a couple, Ian. And this may well be for you, Jack. On page 53, the page is headed up, Our People at a Glance. And that table in there, I was just wondering what that's trying to tell us, because it has 60%, 27% and 23%, which adds to 110%. So I was just wondering, am I misreading that? Right, in the subtext. Right. Right, okay. So, I wonder whether that, do we have a one,
I can make that a bit more clear.
Yeah. Sorry, I did miss that.
That's fine.
And my next one was for you, Ian, just on the balance sheet, and I sort of mentioned this to Sam of EY this morning. The negative figure this year in special reserves, us accountants don't understand negative or debit balances and reserves. And when I go to note 25, I see that it's particularly driven by a big movement in the depreciation reserve. And I'm just a little confused. I don't understand that and what's going on there. So can you help me out, or have a look at it and come back?
You can. So through you, Chair. So look, the depreciation reserve account is a mechanism that we use to track the level of depreciation funding that we use on capital expenditure. Now, this was an account which was established about 2018 from memory, when the initial kind of conversations around depreciation funding really gathered momentum. So it's quite a recent reserve. But what this shows you is that we are actually spending more on capital depreciation funded. We're spending more on capital expenditure than we are funding through our depreciation portion of the rates take. So if you recall, we have a policy of funding, at the moment it's 85%, and we increase that by 1% every year. So this shows the shortfall. This is kind of like the scorecard of how we're doing in that vicinity. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it does, but I just wonder what the double entry here is. That seems to me a bit more like a sort of memo account, or
it very much
something
it's
like
a,
that.
The entries are within equity, so they are measuring effectively our performance on depreciation funding, but it is intra equity entries.
Because that means that this is going to be in place for some years, isn't it? And is that, that depreciation reserve in note 25 is going to continue to increase up higher than the 36 million debit.
Potentially,
So,
although it could actually be quite revolutionary, different after a transition of Three Waters.
Okay, yeah. So it does sort of throw up a sort of an unusual result when you take all of those special reserves and funds. You've got a sort of a debit balance.
It's kind of like we're in overdraft.
Yeah. Well, as I say, I think probably between you and the auditors, that would be something to just sort of look at and make sure that that's appropriate sort of disclosure. Maybe it's just disclosure.
Yep.
Within that sort of reserves and equity. Because
some comments there.
Yeah. Because it is an unusual situation to have that as a debit.
I've got a couple of questions about the statement of service performance, some of the measures. On page 1, it says there's no result. This is for percentage of indicators from an independent harbour and stream environmental report that wasn't done in this year. So we've got no result and then not achieved. And I wondered why it was not achieved as opposed to no result. There's that other category of...
The percentage of indicators.
So the Note 22 says that you didn't undertake a report, so there was no result. And then that because there's no result, you've said that
It's a bit convoluted in a way because it's saying we weren't able to measure what had improved. So we've recorded that as being not
achieved, substantially achieved, not achieved. And then there's a fourth one which says no result or not applicable.
Yes.
And I
with auditors, really it's up to our auditors if they would accept.
I just wondered if there was a different result. I've got one other question which is of a similar nature. So on page 112, just go there. In this the performance measure on foot traffic around the city centre. So the target is increasing, and you've got a result for 23-24 of 21,950. And the performance note says that you've achieved the performance target. And I wasn't sure how you could have achieved an increasing result when you didn't have any data from the previous year.
Yes. Through you, Chair, what we've done with that result is we've used the data that was captured in the 2021-22 year, so actually the year before last year.
Okay.
So we've said we've increased on that number rather than, we didn't have a number last year. So that's what we've used for that one.
Jack,
would it be worth including a note?
Yeah.
Yep, we can.
Footnote might be helpful.
Definitely do that.
Well spotted, Phyllis.
Okay, and it's probably the same answer to a question I had, which was on page 114, which was exactly the same, where you had achieved with no data, and you might have the same. It's the bottom one on page 114. Percentage of footpaths that are in fair or better condition, maintain or improve. You had no data from last year, but you've got achieved. So,
Yeah, that's through you, Chair. That's likely to be the same, but I might just double check and come back to you if that's all right.
yeah. So again, a footnote just explaining that would be great. That's all I had on the service performance measures. Thank you.
Thank you, Felicity. Councillor Philo.
I have a few questions around the some of the numbers, just some general questions really. So on page 108 around the harbour, there was nothing against grants and funding. The sort of funding was in rates. So has the funding for the riparian planting, has that stopped, or is it somewhere in there that I can't see?
Councillor, there's a wee bit of a discussion going on at the table here. Wendy.
I am not 100% certain, but I think we are showing that grant in our parks area rather than...
I believe so. I need to check, but I can assure you, Councillor, that the funding has not stopped. It's just we were treating it.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so it's just it's not in here. It's somewhere else.
We'd have to check exactly where we're showing it, but it is, we're just certainly still receiving it.
Okay, that's good. Cool. And on page 102, yes, so this one's for drinking water. Can you just direct me to whereabouts in this data would be the cost that we pay to Greater Regional for our bulk water? I'm assuming it's payments to staff and suppliers, but
through you, Chair, yes, yes, most definitely.
Okay, cool, thank you. And then just going further up to stormwater, which is on page 96. Page 96. Can someone please just give a little bit of an explanation around the reason for the, I don't know, so what, 3 million increase in the rates from the annual plan to the actual? What was the reason for that increase?
Yeah, through you, Chair, I think we'll have to get back to you on that. That's a good question. I can't answer at the moment.
All right, Ian, so if somebody can sort of revert back to Councillor Filu on that. So,
thank you. That's all my questions for now.
Thank you for that. Any further questions or discussions? Felicity?
I did have another question. It's on a separate matter, which was about the wellbeing indicators on page 198. And I thought it was really interesting information, but it was the placement of that page sort of after contact information. So I just wasn't sure where that fitted in the annual report as a whole.
Through you, Chair, I think that's a fair comment. We could probably move it up towards the upfront section if councillors would think that that's a better place for it.
It felt like an afterthought, just
Yeah,
added on,
Yeah.
because it's interesting information.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can.
Jack, you might seek some input from management and or councillors on that. I think that's a good call out. That it warrants a sort of more prominent position than being tagged on the end. So
That's all from me. Thanks.
all right, thank you very much. Excellent discussion on that. Just to sort of stress the point that Ian and Jim made, that this is still draft, remains draft up until it's signed off at the end of the month by council. So, good process today, good discussion, good questions, and that's exactly what management expect of us here at Audit and Risk. So there was a long list of things that we were asked to do: receive the report, note the comments of the external auditors, which we will come to, agree the appropriate information and approach has been taken in respect to processes, note the overview of financial and non-financial results, and endorse the adoption of the annual report and summary annual report at the October council meeting. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Aye. Contrary, carried. Thank you again, team, for your efforts to date in this regard. So agenda item 7.5, the Ernst & Young closing report is in our papers. We've been asked to receive this report, so I'll move in that regard, seconded by Councillor Duncan. Sam, over to you. We will have read and somewhat understood your report, so if you can sort of help us through that, please.
Cool. Thank you, Chair. So an LTP year is always a big year, so hot on the heels of Council adopting its LTP in June. Ian and the team were straight into the finance process. So we're coming to the conclusion of a very successful audit process. We're on track for adoption at Council's meeting at the end of the month, and we expect to issue an unqualified audit report. And so councillors will recall in recent years we've been dealing with a few matters that had impacted the audit report and qualifications, and last year we resolved the last of those related to the water complaints, and but a qualification remained in respect to the comparative information. So it's a pleasing result to get to the end of that direction of travel, and we've got some work to conclude in that regard, but that's what we're working towards. Our closed report, which has an executive summary on page 222 of your pack, we've got really well-established areas of focus for the council that we've presented to you in previous audits and in our plan. And so I'll just talk to those by exception. We've made good progress on the outstanding matters that were listed when we finalised this report. And really our work's down to a couple of key areas: final QA on the annual report the committee just reviewed, completing our work on the water complaints measure, and awaiting final clearance from Audit New Zealand on matters that they audit on our behalf that Wellington Water prepare and communicate to you. But as I said, they're all on track. So I'll just call out a couple of highlights in our report and then hand over for questions. So we do significant work on Council's capital assets and infrastructure, including review of the valuations and the capital additions through work in progress. We noted a $12 million error in land under roads, quite a detailed thing around repointing and just mapping of suburbs. So it was a really good find, but nothing significant and a bit of an anomaly. We have tested the 90 odd million that council's capitalised. We'd identified in that work a number of things that were more maintenance or operating expenditure that we didn't think considered the definition of capital. And so as a result, we've got an audit difference sort of in the order of $1.5 million. That's not significant to the financial statements as a whole and will get picked up in the subsequent period. But we've concluded that work, so there's no changes required to the numbers you see in draft, and we've since finalised our work on the roading valuation that was outstanding. Rates being the key funding source for councils, another area of focus. We've completed that working plan without issue. And just on the right-hand side of page 224, we've completed our NZTA subsidy work, but also have a difference around some funding council received but deferred, not dissimilar to the development contributions. But in that case, we thought that we're of the view that there are no obligations, so that would be income in the period. And so that goes the other way to those capital differences that I referred to under infrastructure assets. And then just if I go over the page, councillors will be aware with the Spicer Valley landfill, there's work to renew the consent ahead of its expiry in 2030. One judgment that underpins the amounts in the financial statements is the assumed landfill closure in 2053 and then the aftercare thereafter. And so the timing of that in the future means the amount that you record as a liability today is relatively modest as it grows over time to be the expected amount around 2050 when it's going to be incurred. So that judgment's consistent with the long-term plan we've recently finalised, but should that play out in different circumstances, whether the consent can't be finalised or it closes sooner, the cash flows involved are much more significant than the amount currently recorded in the financial statement. So there's just those change in circumstances could have a large financial impact. So very comfortable with the assumption adopted, the consistency with the LTP, something we'll monitor over future periods, but really an opportunity to ensure that you understand that judgment has an impact on your financial statements. It's non-cash until you spend the money, but you're putting money away for those costs you expect to incur. And then just... So I think if I go through page 229, I've covered those couple of audit differences we have. We have one modest one, something didn't quite make it in the gate at 30 June. That's another $500,000 to the downside. But in total, those level of differences aren't material to the financial statements as a whole. And in the interest of a smooth process to the end, because they're not consequential, they'll be unadjusted differences. So I just pause in case there are any questions on those elements of our report.
Councillor Leggett.
Sam, just in the executive summary, I suppose it doesn't matter. So when your areas of audit focus, and just when I reread it again now, it's clearer, so that it's the focus you're giving where you've got infrastructure and other assets. It's a high focus. Yeah. Okay. I just wonder whether you'd make it clearer by saying high focus, medium focus. I know it's repetitive. I know you say it above, but when I read it,
you can see the traffic light, the different colours to the right.
I do see that.
Yep.
Yeah, but it just says high. All right. It's a high focus, isn't it? Yeah. That's all.
Yeah. Right.
You probably forget what I'm saying then. Don't worry about it. So
we'll reflect on that.
It's just that I looked at it and I looked at all this other stuff and I'm thinking, high what? Oh yeah, high focus. It was just me being.
Yeah.
Not that anyone's probably going to. The people that read this probably understand these things better anyway. Can I ask you also that? Do you think that the issues we had over defining what's OPEX and what's CAPEX, that amount of money there, that we've got some takeaways from that we'll apply differently next time around? Some learnings from that?
Yes, and so management's got some actions in that regard. The guidelines are up for renewal. Yes. Management's got some actions in that regard, and the guidelines are up for refresh and revisiting. It's not uncommon. Us accountants have sort of got well-formed views and experience in this regard. So it's really, in a distributed business like council, training's really a good opportunity for an uplift in those areas.
Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thanks for the report there, Sam. Page 225, contingent liabilities. I think I probably asked this last year, actually, but if you could refresh my memory there, we still have obligations to New Zealand Mutual liability risk pool. How tenuous is that liability, and what's the risk there?
Look, it's an unknown. This was included last year, as you recall. There was a court decision that clarified the responsibility of risk pool, and so council continues to have a liability where risk pool has exhausted its reserves in respective periods council participated, and it is an unknown, hence its contingency. Very difficult to quantify. Management might have some more information.
Through you, Chair, I think as time progresses, the risk of being, come at for further contributions, I think it diminishes over time. So you can never write. For the moment we can't not have it as a contingent liability, but I think here and now the risk is less than what it was last year, which was less than what it was the year before, and so on and so on.
So can I just add something? I know that the percentages are extremely small. Is that right?
It's unquantifiable.
Unquantifiable, but our allocation, our percentage of that unquantifiable number is quite small. But yeah.
Just one other question. Thanks for that. The audit report on Wellington Water, that's all tracking well, is it?
Yeah, it is. It's later than we expected. We've seen draft results, but we need final results. So what you see aligns with what we expect to get, and we're working to close that off on time.
Thank you, Sam. Can I, on behalf of the committee, pass on, just before I do that, Councillor Philo.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is around our sort of process with regards to CapEx. My understanding was CapEx is funded by loans. Is that correct? That we take out a loan to fund the CapEx? It's borrowed against.
Yeah, in some circumstances, yes.
Okay, so with regards to the roading, was it paid for by a loan, and that's why it was put into the CapEx, or was it paid out of the operating budget? I'm just trying to understand how the confusion occurred.
So when you say roading, you mean the costs we considered were operating that we have a difference in respect?
Yes, sorry, yes, I'm talking about the 1.8. Was that with regards to roading? Was it the operating expenditure that was incorrectly classified as CapEx?
Yeah, so there was roading, lawn mowing, Matt, tree pruning, a couple of other maintenance items. For accounting, we don't. Yeah, we look at how the money's spent separately from how it's funded. So as we test the capital work, it's assessing the nature of it and whether council's put it in the P&L or capitalised it, separate from how it's funded. And we look at council's funding between rates and changes in borrowings in separate procedures. So can't comment on the linkage of the two.
Just before I move on, Felicity.
Sorry, was anybody else able to just clarify? Maybe an officer?
Could I add something to that? So the number quoted in the table of audit differences is 1846. Just to provide a little bit more context there, that is a calculated number based on the testing. So it's an extrapolation of some of the testing that has been undertaken by the audit team, and we will take some time to work through the work in progress accounts to actually confirm whether that extrapolation is appropriate or not. And that's a big reason why we also would not want to adjust, because it's at this stage it's a theoretical number. So I just want to make that quite clear. Your other question about funding and how our capital expenditure program is funded, you're correct. A lot of it is debt funded, but a lot of it is also we receive subsidies, say, from NZTA for certain roading capital projects. Some of our renewals are generally funded through depreciation funding, which therefore comes through rates. So it's not all capital, expenditure is funded from debt. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ian.
Okay.
Yeah. I did have one other question for the auditor. I'm just trying to find the page. Sorry. It was around the manual journaling. Oh gosh, where is it now? Yeah, sorry, it's on page 228. I'm just wondering, Sam, if you could please just maybe expand or give a little bit more context around under your audit results, examining manual journal entries assessed to be of high risk.
Yeah, sure thing. So journal entries are accounting postings, and they can be whatever the person posting the journal wants them to be. So you can make any change to the numbers presented in your financial statements by recording a journal entry. And so we focus on those journal entries that are, have higher risk characteristics to test the veracity of those and the appropriateness and our consistent, whether they have a business purpose. Where things go wrong, sometimes they're masked by unnecessary or inappropriate journal entries. So it's a really standard audit test. Practical circumstances mean we need to be risk focused because you can't test every manual journal entry, and a lot are appropriate. So really we seek to hone in on those that would have the most significant impact in the financial statements and a dollar value or outside what we expect.
Oh, yeah, awesome. Cool. Thank you, Sam.
Important to add to that, Sam, isn't it? It's a very normal process. So, it's not a sort of abnormal process to do journal entries. You have to do them, but it's an important audit step to look at the ones with high risk characteristics. So. Just checking with you, Felicity, you're all clear, or do you have comments or questions?
No, I didn't have any questions. I thought the audit report was very clear and didn't raise any concerns with me. I thought it was showed that the team had done good work, so no questions.
Thank you, Felicity, and a very good segue into my comments. Thank you, Sam and Matt and the team. Take our thanks back to the team. A great audit, and I think the point that Sam raised that on the land under road valuation, they found an error of 11.9. While in that particular area it doesn't have a lot of impact, it reduces the uplift in the valuation. But that's why you have audits, an independent sort of set of eyes to have a look and do these valuations in particular make sense. So it was a good cop, if you like, and thank you, Sam, for the team's diligence in picking up those sorts of errors. So, all right. So it's been moved and seconded that we receive the closing report from the auditors. Do all those in favour please say aye. Contrary, carried. Thank you again, Sam. Right, we're going to move briefly now into public excluded. So I'll move a motion to go into public excluded, and that Sam Nicole and Matt Walker from Ernst & Young be permitted to remain in the meeting. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Trelin. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried.